Because understanding great literature is better than trying to read and understand yet another business book. On the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, we commit to reading, dissecting, and analyzing the great books of the Western canon. You know, those books, from those written by Jane Austen to Shakespeare's works and everything in between for the last 2,500 years, that you might have fallen asleep to reading when you were trying to read them back in high school. We do this for our audience, the owner, the entrepreneur, the manager, or even the civic leader who doesn't have the time to read, dissect, analyze, and leverage insights from literature to execute leadership best practices in the confusing and chaotic postmodern West we all now inhabit. Welcome to the rescuing of Western civilization at the intersection of literature and leadership. Welcome to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast. Hello, my name is Jesan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, episode number 99. This is our big, well, not big, it's just the 99th episode. There you go. That's the whole thing. So
it's the big because the 100th is like the shot, right? Like that's like the over. This is the big one. The 99 should be the one that everyone. This is the anticipatory.
This is the prequel to the 100th episode.
Look at this. We're doing the prequel first.
I think it's amazing. It's almost like we are not Hollywood producers. How about that? We actually know how to count in forward and not reverse. Oh, these people. Speaking of which, the Oscars were last night. We could talk about that.
Yes.
But we're going to talk about a couple different things on this podcast today. Heading into our 100th episode, we're going to talk about what it's like to do 100 episodes with me, although you're probably going to hear about that on the 100th episode too. But what it's like to do 100 episodes with me. We'll talk about some of the books that we've covered over the last 100 episodes with Tom. He has not been here for all 100, but he has been here for a significant chunk, and so we'll talk about some of that. I will also mention that we have upcoming on the podcast some books that I think all of you out there are going to want to pay attention to and are going to want to hear us talk about with folks. And in particular, we have a couple of bonus episodes that are coming up that I think you're going to want to not miss at all. But to kick off this 99th episode, by the way, there's no book today, so this is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. I always say that, and then we might have going long anyway, but it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, and hopefully you as leaders will get something out of it as well. Now, before we started recording, Tom and I were talking about artificial algorithms and AI. Now, I'm not going to have Tom go on record here about AI, but I'm going to go on record about AI and say that I don't believe that it is all it is cracked up to be, and I believe the promises of it have been oversold a little bit. And as a person who reads literature and who pays attention to what's happening, not only in popular technology and popular culture, but also pays attention to sort of the ripple effects of this, I do find it interesting that large language algorithms are the next big thing. But I remember the last big thing a few years ago, which was Bitcoin. That was going to change the world. And then I remember before that it was blockchain. And then before that it was social media. And then before that it was email. And then before that, it was all of the businesses that went belly up during the dot-com bubble. And then before that, it was Ask Jeeves. And then before that, it was a little browser called Netscape. And so this is just the latest in a long line of things that are going to upend the entire world and bring on the apocalypse. Although I do find it interesting that China's surveillance system with 700 million cameras is called Skynet.
Yeah. I don't think that was by accident.
Don't think that's accidental, Tom. No. Oh, my God. All right. So let's start off with this. What have you learned after 100 episodes? Hanging around for probably about 25 or 30 of them. What have you learned about books from like hanging around with me on these podcasts? Because we've talked about it before, like how there have been some books that we've covered where you've been like, I don't know how we're going to get anything out of that. And then we've gotten something out of it, or where you've been really passionate about the book or you really know it and you're like, oh yeah, these are some things that we can get out of here. So what have you learned what have you learned for our folks here after almost 100 episodes from doing this podcast with me?
Well, I mean, it's funny that you say. I think you hit the nail on the head on a couple of them for sure. So let me just tell you right out the gate. The first time you ever asked me, this is a couple few years ago at this point. I don't know exactly how long ago, but it was in my brain. It was quite a while ago that when you first came on and asked me to come on as a guest, and I said, "What's the podcast about?" And you said, "It's about leadership lessons." I said, "Great, sign me up." Like what? And then you said, "Yeah, we read books." And then when I go, I went a timeout, like Stephen Covey and like I was thinking like Tony Robbins, like, and you're like, no, like the classics. And I go, classic leadership books? Like I didn't even understand what you were saying at the time. And I was like, and you're like, Tom, listen, stop being an idiot and listen to like the classics, like The Great Gatsby and like, you started naming The Grapes of Wrath and he's naming all these books. And I go, leadership lessons? Like you're like today, like I was really honestly confused as to what your vision of this was in the beginning, like with the very first conversation we had about this.
Yeah.
So then you hit me with a couple of these books and I go, wait, we're supposed to take leadership lessons from the Good Earth? Like, I was like, wait, I don't understand this. I don't understand what we're.
The Good Earth sticks with you. That one sticks with you. That one really like that. That was a that was a book that really hit the target with you because you were like, I don't Wang Lung,
yeah,
famine in China.
China, yeah.
What?
Like, so yeah, you're right. That one stuck with me for quite a bit. But and even the Shakespeares of the reading the and I'm like, I just. But in fairness to you and to your credit, I think a lot of it is there's some of it that's interpretive, right? Like you can interpret a certain thing that an author was thinking, or they may not have said it explicitly, but you can pull out like a thought process and like a series of events that led up to something that you can so that was like kind of pulling teeth from a tiger, so to speak. But we still made the leaps, right? Like we still made the connections, and and in my opinion, they were worth it. But then there are other very clear and obvious ones. Again, when you start talking about character interactions and who's taking the lead on a particular event or situation that's in a book, and how did that leadership translate? How could you translate that leadership in today's world and stuff like that? Like so there's a lot of like translation involved in it, but reality of it is I was impressed the first couple of times, and then when I became more of a regular co-host, now I just expect it. I expect that you and I can take leadership lessons out of. I don't care what somebody puts in front of us to read, right? Like there's got to be something to it that we can pull out.
Well, I'm not going to put you in front of City of God by Augustine. I'm still doing that one by myself because I don't want to pull you along on that. I don't want to pull you along on that dray horse, or with that dray horse. I think there's some things I just got to do by myself. Although you and I did do the introduction and the first chapter, although we didn't get out of the introduction though, to War and Peace. And so, well, I'm gonna slap that sucker on you, and we can pull that one through the mud. Okay, interpretive leaps. So I started off this episode today with a little soliloquy, not even a soliloquy, a few sentences about our algorithmic overlords or underlords, as the case may be, because there's no mind back there. And you and I were talking about, again, offline, sort of how frustrating it is to see what people are putting on these kinds of algorithms and how much weight they're putting on top of them. Human beings do interpretive leaps. I think that's a huge part of leadership. So people often ask, is leadership art, or is it science? Is it a skill that can be learned, or are you born with it? And I think at the intersection of all four of those ideas, born with it, learned, skill, or sorry, not skill, but art or science, at the intersection of all four of those is this idea of interpretive leaps. Walk me through your mental process for doing an interpretive leap, because I send you the script and you look at the script and you read it. Sometimes I'll send you links to extra stuff. Sometimes the book is really short, like The Burglar's Christmas. or something that's even shorter, or not shorter than that, but something that's easy to get online, like Follow the House of Usher. I remember when we did that episode. You know, the Edgar Allan Poe story. You read the story because I don't think you'd read Poe before. I don't think you'd read that story.
I had read Poe before, but not that particular
but
story.
That particular story.
I was at least familiar with his style of writing.
Right. And so at that intersection, how do you make those interpretive leaps with me? How does that process work? Because I know how it works in my head. Like I'm already making the interpretive leap. So when I read a book, I will underline things, I'll highlight things, I will talk to the book. So I'll write things in the margins. I'm one of those people, like if you go to Half Price Books or Books A Million or any of the other used bookstore. Well, Books A Million isn't a used bookstore. It should be, but it's not. And there goes Books A Million as a potential sponsor. All right then. Half Price Books, right? And you buy and this is one of my favorite things. Like I'll buy a copy of a book that I haven't read yet, and I'll crack it. Like Last of the Mohicans, like I'll crack it and I'll see like all of the notes that the other person put in there. And now I'm reading this book and I'm also reading their notes and I'm kind of walking along with them through the book. But then I'm also writing notes over them and arguing with them in the margins. It's just it's this but it's all part of that interpretive process. To talk a little bit about how you make those interpretive leaps, because I think people are fascinated by that, or at least I am.
I think that's a hard question to answer because I don't think I have a firm foundational step-by-step process in my brain, right? I think it's more in the lines of like kind of to your little explanation of your Venn diagram there, which is like I believe all four are part of it, right? I mean, I do think there is a small piece of you that needs to be born into a leadership, at least mentality, right? Like you may not be a born leader, but you have to have like some sort of something in your brain that ticks or gets excited or something about the thought of leadership. Like if the thought of leadership completely turns you off, then how the heck are you supposed to be a good leader, right? Like I think that there's, so when you say born with it, I'm not suggesting somebody comes out as, you know, General Eisenhower, like you're not a born leader, right? Like that was education and taught and whatnot, right? So I think what happens for me is a lot of times I'm trying to envision this paragraph I'm reading or chapter I'm reading or whatever it is about the book. And I'm trying to associate it to something that has happened in my life, right? Like, and again, it doesn't have to be a direct translation, but something remote. Like I remember, you know, The Good Earth was actually a good example of this, right? Because The Good Earth had a lot of like very and you and I were talking about this too because of my cultural background and stuff like that. There was some components to this that directly translated into some of the cultural components in my life. So, and then translating the cultural parts of my life into today's leadership is a simple jump for me, right? So like, so I think that's kind of where it lies. I look at like experience and what I've been taught and what I was born with and some of the things, and I'm looking at the book to find which one of those four is appropriate to my life in the book. Like, I don't know if I just said that. It's coming in my brain. It's working properly. I don't know if it's coming out right, but like
it's coming out fine. You're fine. You're good. Keep going. Keep going. You're fine.
But when you're talking about interpretive leap, I think there has to be a like an associative property to that, right? Like you have to be able to read the book, associate it to yourself, and then take your own experiences and turn it into the leadership process from the book. So it's not a direct jump. Sometimes it's not a direct jump from the book to this leadership quality. Sometimes it's an interpretive thing where you're taking it from the book to you, from you to the leadership, and then you're turning it into something after the fact. So that's the best I can put it. But
well, and it's that ability to argue, right? It's arguing with the book, but then you're also arguing with yourself,
right?
And then you have the benefit of arguing with me, or if whatever I've come up with you agree with, you're like, no, I agree with that, and there's also this, or I don't agree with this, and but okay. So where we've sort of probably one of the more interesting episodes that we did was episode number 85 last year. That was back in November, where we looked at the three essays from George Orwell. What was his name? De Quincey and Northrop Frye. I can't remember the guy's first name. Let me look it up here. Let's see. It was something De Quincey. Can't remember right now. Doesn't matter. Point is, so we have been talking about in that particular episode number 85, we had talked about how the ways in which George Orwell's Politics in the English Language, and then the understanding of knowledge and literary power, and then the understanding of like how people put together their interpretive framework. That was in the North of Fry. It was Thomas de Quincey. That's who it was. When we talked about in that episode, sort of how all three of those essays linked together. And to me, that one was the one with you that was probably the most tenuous. I was the least sure. I was sure I could get you through Good Earth. But those three essays, I did. I looked at it and I went, Tom's going to riot when he sees this. Because we tend to think of George Orwell only in terms of 1984.
Right.
Which we have not covered 1984, maybe Animal Farm. We haven't covered either one of those books on this podcast, by the way, on purpose. We have not covered one of those on purpose yet.
You wanted to build the audience first. You didn't want to lose them right away, right? So you had to get past 100 before you start.
Before I start getting into the real totalitarian meat. And this is also why we have it. I looked at it again. I was in Half Price Books the other day. Shout out to Half Price Books. And I was looking at Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And I picked it up off the shelf and I looked at it and I thought, nope, not yet. Put it back down. Put it back down. Because it's almost too easy. Like from guys like Orwell and Huxley, that kind of writing is almost too easy. But Orwell's on Politics in the English Language, which is really less about politics and more about language, really ties into what we do here. And so essays don't really have a narrative structure like what you're talking about, like an interpretive narrative structure. And I also think that they can be frustrating for people to read because you want it to go somewhere, but it's not a narrative. It's not narratively driven, right? Like Keys to Dreamland by Northrop Frye. That's just about how you like sort of set up your mental houses and what does this look like and all of that. And I read it and I was like, well, I see things here in my brain where this connects to the way that I think about things, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to guide Tom along on this journey. But you kind of just, I mean, by episode 85, you're just like, yeah, okay, go ahead. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, he'll take me somewhere. But you did like, I do remember you in that episode, you did like the points that Orwell made in his essay on language, because he's talking about just how language can be manipulated and how we need to be specific in the ways in which we write. And it reminds me of something that I hear you say in other projects that we're involved in, where you talk about, well, no, I'll do full disclosure here. Full disclosure for folks listening. The other project that I'm involved with Tom on, and I'm not going to name it, it doesn't matter. The other project that I'm involved in, anytime there's a chunk of text to be had, Tom is ruthlessly cutting the text.
Yes. People use too many words.
So, okay, talk about being, okay, so how did that line up then with what we do here? Because I use a lot of words. I'm a blah, 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 blah. But you ruthlessly edit.
But there's a difference. To me, there's a difference. There's an elegance and an understanding of speech that doesn't come through in text. When people are reading text, a lot of times they fill in the blanks anyway, right? Because they're like, again, my son reads a lot of like fiction and a lot of fiction, sci-fi, whatever. I read. Most of my personal reading comes in the form of nonfiction. I'm almost always reading something in the form of culture, history, like something that's like really firmly embedded in. So there's no room to me. There's no room for extra words. I just need the facts. I need you to tell me what's going on. Tell me what you're thinking. Like, tell me what happened. What have you. I don't need 18 adjectives about a diamond, right? Like I don't need 18 adjectives about a hill or a beach. I'm just paraphrasing here, right? I just need you to know that 100,000 people died on this beach. Period. End of sentence. The rest, I can envision what that looks like in my brain. I don't need you to be descriptive about it. So, and people do that when they read. They already start envisioning it. So why adding all these words to text that doesn't require it. Now, in speech patterns, we do require it. We don't do the same thing when somebody is talking to us.
Right.
Somebody's talking to us. We don't start envisioning these thoughts of grandeur and these elements and all that. Like, we don't do that. We're paying attention to what they're talking. So you can use all the descriptive language you want, and people pay attention to the descriptive language. When you're writing something, especially for what the project that we're talking about like marketing messaging and things like that. I'm telling you right now, nobody reads the damn stuff. So why bother putting the words in there? Get to the point so they understand what you're trying to say. And if they're super interested, they will have a conversation with you where you can elaborate all you want.
Is that okay? Is that though is that all part of the flattening that the internet has done to us? Because the internet has changed how we communicate.
For sure. And I agree with you 100%, because again, if you enjoy reading fiction, then you're going to read, but you're not expecting the fiction to be giving you, like, telling you something, like, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, when we're online and we're looking at online resources and marketing materials online, all that stuff, we're expecting it to be telling us something.
Right.
We're not expecting it to tell us a story. We're not expecting it to tell us.
Oh, well, hold on. Isn't all of marketing from Seth Godin all the way to people who are not Seth Godin? Isn't all of marketing telling a story, Tom? I mean, isn't that what David Ogilvy taught us?
So, yeah. Okay. Yes, but all right. Yes, but what I don't want is a 20-paragraph statement from marketing that tells me that I need a new mouse for my computer. Right? Like, there's times and places for it, and I feel like, again, we're so strapped for attention that I'm always telling people, your marketing message, the simpler the better. Get their attention. Make a statement. Make a bold statement that's going to force it. Now, once you get beyond that, now you're talking about relationship building, which can be storytelling. That's different. That's the second level of marketing. When you start blurting out all these, like, when's the last time you went to an About Us page on a website and actually read the whole damn thing?
Well, me 2 days ago, but I'm a weirdo.
You are a weirdo, because nobody does that. Nobody does that. Right? Like, so now, mind you, unless you are already beyond the initial messaging, unless you are beyond the initial got your attention, and now you need to know and understand who you want to do business with, that's different. Now I might go read the actual About Us page, because now I'm beyond that first. So when I cut all the language out, it's because we know that first wave, that first interaction cannot be, it can't be The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
It can't be a story like that.
It needs to
be of mice and men.
Fitzgerald would hate all of this. He would.
Yes.
Scott Fitzgerald would hate all of this. Hemingway would be okay with it. Hemingway would be fine. Hemingway would be like, yeah, can we cut more words? Is it all possible? Can I get that entire website down to one word? Just says click.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like, we all know you want to do it. Just click.
Right.
But the problem not the problem. One of the other challenges that we run into in doing a podcast like this, and you kind of mentioned it is the problem of attention. And one of the first big pieces of feedback that I got on this podcast was that conversations about books for leadership professionals can't be any longer than a half hour. And I thought, well, maybe for you, to the person who's giving me that feedback, but I can't think of, and I've said this in different ways on the podcast before, I can't think of a way to get ideas about leadership across that are fundamentally complicated and tied into a lot of other different aspects of our homes, our families, our civic lives, our work lives, our society, and our culture. I can't figure out a way to get across those complex ideas in a half hour. I can't do it. And I know there are people who do. God bless them. I know there's people who do. I even talked about this with another sales and marketing professional who does consultative selling, and teaches around consultative selling, John Hill. And he and I have done probably the longest episode ever. We did almost a 4.5 hour long episode on Miyamoto Musashi's A Book of Five Rings, which that book is about that thin. And we talked about it for 4.5 hours. And the point that John makes is that I should actually introduce you to John, but I think the two of you would have a lot to talk about. But the point that John makes is that there's a lot that can be gained from that little amount because it spreads out to so many other places, which I think is true. But for a leadership professional who believes that they are crowded in their attention, I get it that this podcast is going to be a little bit of a struggle, but I like that. I like the friction.
Well, yeah, but I mean, take it from the sales and marketing guy, right? Like I think it's from a purely marketing standpoint, they're right, but they're missing a component. Meaning, you tend to see things that are at one extreme or the other. Either something in really short, digestible bursts, and again with a complicated message or with a complicated topic like leadership, a half an hour to me is a concentrated, so you could have done this in half an hour spurts, but you'd be covering the same book for 3 episodes, right? Where you could talk about one component of it and really go into half an hour depth of component. So it's short, digestible bursts or very long explaining explorative positions, right? So it has to be, and blogging, by the way, is no different. You should have an 800 word blog or a 2,500 plus word blog. You should not do anything in the middle. All those blogs in the middle get chewed up by Google and nobody gives a crap about them. But if you can write 800 word blogs and you're pumping one out every day, because by the way, writing 800 words is a piece of cake. It's really 800 words is really not long. It's basically one Google Doc on one page, right? So if you can pump out, but you're putting those out like 2-3 of them a week, great, because your message is going to be very succinct, very short, very quick, very digestible. And now if you want to really go in depth on explaining something, you need 2,500 words or more, or Google's not going to give you the credit in the algorithm to being a thought leader. So you're a thought leader in one of 2 ways in that particular example. It's short bursts of really good knowledge or long explanations about what you're doing. The podcast is no different, right? You either need to have that short, and they were right, less than a half an hour, or what you're doing, which is an hour and a half or more, because those are the only two audiences that exist on the podcast world. Nobody's listening to a 45-minute or an hour-long podcast anymore. They just don't do it. So I agree with that statement.
Well,
you're missing the other part.
Oh, I think that there's a lot of podcasts that are in that tranche that are 45 minutes to an hour. And again, I talked about this a little bit with John. Like, God bless them, doing amazing work. And I don't know how you get out of that ditch. I really don't. You've got to be, I do. Actually, I do have an idea of how you get out of that ditch. You've got to be doing growth hacking with shorts videos. That's how you get out of there. Moving on. So we've talked about.
We're not even going to explain why I thought that statement was so funny.
We're not. We're not. We're going to leave it to the audience, and the audience is going to go, why? Why did you laugh at that? What's going on back there? So, episode 60, we talked about a lot of different things, but one of the things that we did talk about was how you build real things in the real world with real people. And I think that's become more and more incumbent upon us, I think, as human beings to kind of do that. And I loved how you talked about how doing a podcast is about that engagement and engaging with people. And so, one of the reasons I do this show is because I get to talk to members of my audience in real life. Like, I'll walk up to them, and this is usually the first reaction. Like, I'll walk up to somebody and they'll go, or I'll say, I do a podcast, blah, 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 and they'll say, oh, what's that about? And then I'll tell them the title. It's Leadership Lessons from the Great Books. And their eyes will light up. And I've done this in business situations too. And like the VP of whatever, all of a sudden will start talking to me about Dune.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, you got to read Dune. Have you read that on your podcast? Dude. Or dude, you got to read like this military book thing from 1950. Oh, by the way, for our month of November, one of the books that we're going to be covering, I just bought this. We're going to be covering the U.S. Army's and the Marines Counterinsurgency Manual. You heard it here first.
Interesting.
Because there's leadership lessons inside of the Counterinsurgency Manual. See, Tom looks skeptical. You can see it on the video,
Yeah.
but they are there. I was flipping through it and I went, oh, 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 and then I put it down. And it's written by General David Petraeus, who put together the counterinsurgency in Iraq and helped kind of turn the corner on that country back in 2013, I think 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. I might have my dates off, but he was involved in that. So there are some lessons that are in that book that we're going to cover on the podcast. But back to this point about building real things in the real world. So the podcast allows us to build real things in the real world and have real engagement. I think the reason that people struggle with these old books is because they don't know how to engage with them. So one of the things that we talked about was, did we do Persuasion or did I do that one by myself? Persuasion might have been a solo show. I don't think you did Persuasion.
That might have been by yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that might have been by myself. And there are some books that I've done by myself that I would have wanted to do with Tom, like The Abolition of Man. I think you would have really enjoyed that, the C.S. Lewis, because it tied in a lot into what Orwell was talking about in politics in the English language. We did Sense and Sensibility, actually. We did that one. How do you get leadership professionals to kind of not give short shrift to these books? Because this would be an easy podcast to do if I was doing I always pick on Good to Great, so I won't pick on Good to Great. I'll pick on another leadership book. There we go. If I was doing Ogilvy on advertising, which by the way has a ton of good stuff in it. I read that book like years and years and years ago, and I was like, this guy was a genius. Yeah. But then I never went back and revisited it because I absorbed the lesson and I moved on. But Sense and Sensibility, I could read that multiple times because there's always another level to go down inside of that book. But how have we convinced people to do that on this podcast?
Well, I don't know, because the funny part, so my significant other, by the way, is a literary major. I don't know if I ever told you that. But
no, you've never mentioned that.
So she has a degree in English literature, and
this is brand new information to me. Why are we her?
Well, it's funny that you say that because every time we do these podcasts, and her and I will sit at dinner that night or whatever, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, we were talking about Sense and Sensibility today about the leadership podcast," and she went, "What?" And I went, "Yeah." And she's like, "Jane Austen."
Yes.
She goes, "You guys are going to ruin the book." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "That book is amazing." And she starts talking about all the great and wonderful, like what she liked about the book and blah, blah, blah. And I go, like, so how are we going to, she's like, that doesn't apply today. Like nothing about that book. She goes into the actual literary part of it. Like, in the, not feminist views. It's not really feminism, but like that whole kind of woman empowerment. So I guess it's feminism to a degree, but whatever. And she's like, because like Jane Austen was way beyond her time, blah, 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 right? She starts talking about the actual literary value of the book. And I went, okay, that's not what we were talking about.
That's not what we're talking
I felt bad. I felt guilty almost. Like, so kind of goes to your point. Like, so how do we get people like her, really? Like, if you're thinking about, like, because I have a feeling the general public thinks of these books the way that she does, in the sense of like, these are literary creations of, like, these are magnificent literary creations. These are not books that are designed good to great. Like there are books that you're supposed to cut up and chop up and look at it and dissect it like that, because it's designed to do that for leadership and or other lessons about business in general. So I think it's interesting that you asked the question that way. Like, how do we get people to think of them like that? Because I don't know if we can without this podcast. I know it sounds kind of self-projecting, but that's not my intent. But I'm like, but I think if somebody just picks up the book and reads it on their own, they're not going to translate it into these types of thought processes.
No.
They need a catalyst, right? Like they need something to poke and prod them into thinking outside the box. And then I think that's what this podcast does very well for them, because without it, I don't think anyone's doing it. And you're going to offend people who, especially literary majors, like my wife,
like Mrs. Top.
She's not happy with this. She's not happy with this at all. No, but the more we've talked through it with her, the more I've kind of said, oh, what about this book? And by the way, Pearl Buck was one of her favorite authors at one point in her life. Not now, but at one point she loved her. And so when I brought up Pearl Buck, and she's like, again with the what? Like, how are you? So anyway,
yes,
yeah. So
no, we need to get her to subscribe. That's a subscriber. You got to close that sale, Tom. Well, and we've covered. I mean, so we talked about Sense and Sensibility, which we've covered. We talked about. I did actually bring you along on City of God, actually, on Augustine, books 3 and 4, I think. But we also talked about, a couple of books, Burglar's Christmas. But we also talked about, and I want to bring these two up because they are both in the same sort of space. So you have books that are historical and philosophical, which unfortunately in our current time, everything gets outsourced to politics and contemporary culture because we interpret everything through a contemporary lens. And so last year, we covered Black Indian Slave Narratives, right, by Patrick Mingus, a book that was about the African Americans who were slaves with the Cherokee and the other tribes that were in Oklahoma. A book that exposes history that I was barely aware of. You probably are way more aware of it than I am, but I was barely aware of it. And I remember picking up that book at a bookstore in Texas and looking at it and going, oh God, I got to do this on the podcast. Like I gotta figure out how this fits. But that book was a struggle for me to figure out what are the leadership lessons you can pull from that. What are the ways we can tie this to not necessarily contemporary history, but just to long-standing ideas that will last throughout humanity, which is what you get from Sense and Sensibility, or you get from Shakespeare, which is why Austen and Shakespeare will be there at the end of nuclear war with the cockroaches and the insurance companies that will all send out a dividend at the end and then collapse.
I can't wait to tell Janine now that you just associated Jane Austen with the cockroach. That's gonna go over really well. Just
I'm working my way in slowly, getting into the system. But we also kind of had the same kind of challenges that we had with Black Indian Slave Narratives. We had the same sort of challenge with Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee.
Yeah.
And we've had the same challenge, interestingly enough, this year with The Republic by Plato, because we tend to put those kinds of books in their own little box, and we don't think of them as literature. We don't think of them as having a literary device attached to them or a literary component attached to them. But when you read Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, there's literary tropes in that. There's the hero's journey. I mean, and you know that book inside and out, but I mean, like that, there's a hero's journey in there. There's a hero's arc that's occurring over the course of that entire book. The Republic of Plato. Well, I can't think of anything more important for leaders to know than what, or a more important question for leaders to ask than what is justice?
Yeah.
And like, how do we actually get to that? Like, maybe we should actually wrestle with this question a little bit.
And how does the definition of justice apply to your business? Like,
right.
It does, but we don't think of it that way.
No.
Like,
it's pushed on us, right? Like in the last few years in a contemporary American business, it's been foisted on business to think about it. And business tends to, unfortunately, fall either into, or business leaders sometimes tend to fall into like the Milton Friedman sort of philosophy, which is, I just exist to provide, if I'm large enough, to provide a dividend to my shareholders, and that's it. Like if you're in the Fortune 500, like that's, I mean, come on, you're a guy making $50,000 a month. Like that's all you're not thinking about anything else. the shareholder calls that Bob Iger or Elon Musk are on have to be insane.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the Teslas or the movies. It's about, well, are we getting a dividend back this year or what, Bob? And if Bob screws up and Bob doesn't deliver a dividend, Bob gets fired. So Bob ain't thinking about justice unless the shareholders tell him to think about justice. If you're at that level. Now, if you're in a mid-level or you're at a much lower level of small, medium-sized business, which is the vast majority of our audience are small, medium-sized business folks, you're trying to avoid, you're trying to scuttle around, avoiding the stomping of the Tyrannosaurus Rexes that are flattening everything of the Fortune 500 companies or even the Fortune 1000 companies. And you are trying to just carve out a little corner of life where you can make a little money, maybe pay your employees, pay yourself, and occasionally be able to take a vacation. You're not thinking about justice. And so when DEI rolls down the hill like water, it hits you like a ton of bricks. Because when were you thinking about that when you started your HVAC business?
Yeah.
You weren't thinking about, like, Plato. Who? I might have heard of that guy maybe in high school. Maybe. Might have read like a paragraph. And I've forgotten that. I'm worried about how to avoid this new thing, this new regulation from the local government or from the federal government or from the state government, this new reporting that requires me to do this thing here or that thing there. Who cares if my employees come in with purple hair and want to take over? And I know. I'm always bagging on the purple hair people. But come on. I am always bagging on the purple hair people. It's only because I'm jealous. This is what my kids tell me. My wife and my kids tell me I'm jealous because I have no hair. Whatever. But we should be concerned about justice. We should be concerned about justice. We should be trying to track the narrative of the hero's journey in some of these books. And I think we've gotten to that on this podcast. Okay. By the way, one of the better books that also combines narrative and these ideas of justice and how you think of all this is Lawrence of Arabia by B.H. Liddell Hart. The biography of T.E. Lawrence.
We did that one a long time ago.
It was way back in 2022.
Yeah.
Seems like 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But I don't think you were convinced that we could get anything out of that guy's life either. But
I was totally not convinced on that one for sure. I actually remember that one very clearly going, what? What the hell?
Well, I'm going to keep bringing you the what the hells over the course of the next year. By the way, we were going to talk about this because we do have an episode, or we had an episode where I had to split off the back end of it because we were talking about the movie Oppenheimer. And so I want to revisit this. Oppenheimer did just win Best Picture of the Year. Christopher Nolan won a Best Director Oscar this weekend. I think it is well.
Didn't Best Actor too, right?
Best Actor went to Cillian Murphy. Cillian Murphy. Best Supporting Actor went to Robert Downey Jr.
His first Academy Award, by the way.
First
50-year career, his first Academy Award.
Which I thought he should have. Didn't he win something for Charlie Chaplin? For Chaplin?
I don't think it was an Oscar though. I think it was oh shoot, what the heck was the one that was just
the Golden Globe?
Golden Globe, thank you. I think it was the Golden Globe. I don't think it was the Oscar.
Okay.
Which, by the way, which is what they thought was going to be the kiss of death for Lily Gladstone in Killing a Flower Moon, because she won the Golden Globe. They thought it was almost impossible for her to win the Oscar, which she didn't, and Emma Stone ended up winning for that.
Well, but historically,
interesting movie she was in. Let me just leave it at that.
Yeah. Historically, yeah. Well, that's not it. Let's not go down that road. Historically,
well, I just want to know if you've seen it. Did you see it? Did you watch it? Okay, all right.
It's not. I'm not the demographic they're targeting for that movie.
Well, after watching it, neither am I. Go ahead.
I think there are some films that can go direct to Netflix. Remember direct to video back in the day?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, this direct to streaming is the new direct to video. Everybody knows it. It is historically hard to win a Golden Globe and then to win an Oscar. It's historically difficult. That's not anything unusual. Matter of fact, what's more unusual is you get anything in the Golden Globes and then you go and you get something at the Oscars. Like the Oscar voters and the Golden Globe like to play political footsie with each other and patty cake, and we'll do this and I'll do this and I'll scratch your back and you won't scratch my eyes out and all this other kind of nonsense, right? And so I was expecting Oppenheimer not to win anything. I thought because I think Nolan did win a Golden Globe. And I thought for sure that Barbie was gonna, because that's just kind of the world we live in. I thought for sure Barbie was going to get nominated for a bunch of things and just win, or that what's her name, Greta Gerwig, who was the director of Barbie, was at the very minimum going to win Best Director, because that's the world we live in now. And so I was well prepared for Nolan to win nothing. And I think I've gone on record with this before, and I'll go on record with it again. Christopher Nolan is one of the top 3 best directors working right now. Right now.
Well, I would expand that even a little bit further, but go ahead.
I think Spielberg's lost his guts. I think Scorsese's old and kind of played out, should probably retire. I did not see Killers of the Flower Moon. I just part of the reason why I haven't is because I think DiCaprio should have been in the De Niro role. De Niro never should have been in that movie. And some other younger actor, maybe that Timothy Chalamet kid from Dune, should have been in Killers of the Flower Moon. That would have worked more better. Because DiCaprio, I hate to tell you, Leo, but you're an old man now.
Yeah. You're not 25 or 30 anymore. Like that's I agree.
You're not a young ingenue who's like dewy and wet behind the ears. Like you're not. There's a reason you're dating 25-year-old girls.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a reason. Anyway, anyway, it doesn't matter. No, I'm not going to bring that up. But I was thinking about something biblical that just popped into my brain about King David and when he died. And anyway, it doesn't matter. Just something that popped up into my head there. Anyway, the Lego blocks went together. I did watch, by the way, both of those movies this weekend. My son loves the Lego movie. And he loves the second movie. So we watched both of those this weekend, and we watched the Batman Lego movie. Those movies are brilliant, by the way.
The Lego movies?
The Lego movies. Oh my God, they are. They're just so. It's nice to see a kid's film that's not where the joke goes so fast you have to pay attention to it. Because most kids' films, because I still have little kids in my house, so I still watch a lot of little kids' films. Tom has graduated into another area of his life, which I look forward to getting, where I don't. But my 13-year-old's coming along. We watched a Roman Holiday this weekend. Like that was our family movie night. So we watched a Roman Holiday, which drove my 7-year-old crazy. He's like, it's in black and white. That's literally the first thing he said. It's in black and white. Oh. But the kid slogged it out. He did. He slogged it out all the way to the end. He was ready for it. But my daughter likes Audrey Hepburn. So, and I think Gregory Peck was pretty good in that. Anyway. But the Lego movies are movies that aren't they're slapsticky, but not slapsticky. And you get away with it by having the clever dialogue and the clever songs and the wittiness in the songs and the wittiness in the dialogue. And plus, I'm a sucker for Legos because I had Legos when I was a kid. My kid have Legos now. Like over Christmas break, winter holiday, I put together a Lego lion for my kid with no instructions whatsoever. I just gutted that out. My wife was like, "What are you doing? Why are you putting together a Lego lion with no instructions?" Like, because I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get to the end.
I win. That's what
I win. It's Legos. Come on. But anyway, point is, those movies are brilliant. They're brilliant kids' films. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller are genius producers and writers. Like, and I started watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine lately.
I picked that up too. I started watching that the other day. I've only watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes too.
I'm not a big fan of Andy Samberg. I think he's kind of goofy. He reminds me of a guy that I know locally who's part of some other projects that I'm a part of. Literally, he's a spitting image of that dude. And so it's kind of a little bit odd for me to watch it.
What's the captain's name there? The guy in real life, Andre
Braugher, who just died.
He's awesome.
He's incredible.
Awesome. He is so awesome. Like in this entire world that is supposed to be this ridiculously dumb comedy, blah blah. He is like straight fit, like he's like Oscar nominated. It's so funny. It's perfect. He's perfect. He is perfect in there in that role.
The world lost a real talent when he died last year. Real talent. I mean, I remember when he was on Homicide: Life on the Street. Yep. That guy, amazing dramatic actor, had bones like nobody's business. And then and that was a beautiful conceit of that show. Like, you're going to put this serious guy, to your point, you're going to put this serious guy in with this gaggle of nonsense.
Like, it's a sitcom, everybody. It's a sitcom. You got one of the most talented, underrated, over talented, like just most talented guys. It's like putting Denzel Washington in there, like in a sitcom.
Well, and you could tell in Brooklyn Nine-Nine that Terry Crews, like, is thanking his lucky stars that he gets to stand next to Andre Braugher. He's like, thank God I get to stand next to this guy. And then you've got all the rest of them who are like, oh, well, we're gonna goof. Like, we're just
a bunch of dopes. We're just a bunch of dopes.
We're just a bunch of dopes goofing around. So anyway, what's I think? Oppenheimer. Yes. So thoughts on Oppenheimer. And let's kind of bring this back a little bit. Thoughts on Oppenheimer winning the Best Picture, winning all those awards. Just thoughts. Hello. So I'm going to do some shilling here, and hopefully this will be a pause in our riveting conversation for you. I have an offer for you. My most recent book is 12 Rules for Leaders, the Foundation of Intentional Leadership. It's available in paperback, hardcover, or as an ebook on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and any other place you order books. Now, in this book, I address the 12 leadership areas that I have found leaders need to be the most intentional in to be the type of leader followers actually want to follow. From establishing a foundation of leading teams through managing conflict effectively, all the way through leading teams through change, knowing what to do and why to do it can help readers, like the ones listening to this show, become better leaders. Look, reading this book and living it is like getting coaching from me directly without having to pay my full coaching rate. Head on over to leadershiptoolbox.us. That's leadershiptoolbox.us, and scroll down the homepage and click on the Buy Now button to purchase in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle format on Amazon 12 Rules for Leaders, the foundation for intentional leadership. And that's it for me. Now back to the show.
Well, I gotta be honest with you. I was a little surprised but happy. I was really glad that and Barbie. All right, Barbie was a great movie. Everyone, I get it. All right, everyone loved it. Wonderful. But Oppenheimer was an actual cinematographic. That was a masterpiece. Like, Christopher Nolan did a fantastic job with that, and I think that it deserved to win. And if Barbie had won, I thought I would have been thinking it was a gimmick, like somebody. Mm-hmm. I would have thought it was some backdoor thing that happened in the Screen Actors Guild where they said, everybody just kind of hush and said, yeah, we're going to vote for Barbie because we're going to surprise all the world, like, and make the world think that. And again, I actually did see Barbie, so I'm not suggesting it was a terrible movie by any means. And there's some undertones in it that I think every young girl should watch. Like, there's some good lessons in there, some good messaging, like all that stuff. Great, wonderful, got it. But Oppenheimer was a better movie. I hate to tell you people, but Oppenheimer was a better movie. And Cillian Murphy was incredible. I'm glad he won. I'm glad Robert Downey Jr. won. I thought his character, the way that he portrayed that character in that movie was dead on. I mean, he was just accurate. He was good. And I don't think I've ever seen Robert Downey Jr. in a role that I just wanted to hate him, but didn't. Like, it was like it was like that was the role. He was like, you're supposed to hate this man, but in a certain way, you're like, nah, I get it. Like,
well, and who knew? Who knew a talky movie in the middle of the summer? Okay, Oppenheimer is the kind of movie that Hollywood does not make anymore.
Yes, that too. Yes, I agree.
Like, there's no explosions. Well, I mean, there's a nuclear bomb, but really.
know it was the biggest explosion of mankind, but no, Jesan, there's no explosions.
There's no explosions. I mean, come on, but it's a nuke.
I mean, we're not talking about Michael Bay explosions, but it was still one. It was still a good one in there.
The one that everybody freaks out about now. Anyway, the one the Russians moved the Overton window on. I'm talking about out loud for the first time in like 30 years. But there's nobody in tights. Nobody's in tights coming to save the world.
Yeah.
The use of special effects there was minimal, and that's to Nolan's credit. Nolan finally solved, and I think we talked about this before in my review of Oppenheimer, but he finally solved his problem of, and he is traditionally as a director, this has been the thing that has dogged him. This is his Achilles heel that I'm about to mention. Nolan cannot write women. He doesn't understand how to write a woman character. He doesn't understand how women think. I don't really think he's genuinely interested in figuring it out at a character level inside of a movie. And in this movie, he finally nailed it. And I think he nailed it by actually hiring an actress who could act. I think that solved his problem, right? That was the key problem. It wasn't necessarily the writing or the inability to see into a woman's experience. I think it was you needed a woman to see into that experience and then to have her bring that experience forthwith and just give her the tools to do that. And he did that with, who was it? What was her name? Can't think of the female actress's name in Oppenheimer. Who was it? It was, I'm going to look it up. Hold on a second, folks. It was beep, 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 beep. Nope, not Florence. Emily Blunt. Thank you.
Emily Blunt, yeah.
Emily Blunt. Yes, not Florence Pugh. Florence Pugh was running around naked in there for some reason. I also think that he did a really good job, Nolan did, in showing how, and again, this is an adult drama, showing how adults behaved in an adult situation when everything was on the line. And they may not have been, on the front lines catching bullets, but they were part of a war effort that required adults to behave like adults, which, again, in superhero films, you don't see that level of seriousness because you can't see that level of seriousness. And by the way, I think the audiences are hungry for that now. This is why Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2 have taken off, neither of which I've seen, by the way. Don't come at me with your Dune. I haven't seen either one of them. Just stop.
I haven't seen the second one yet, but I've seen the first one.
Right. But I get the sense from Dune, I get the sense from Oppenheimer that the zeitgeist is beginning to shift. And I hope it's beginning to shift back towards serious adult dramas. Because I remember a time when we had that. Like there was something for adults to watch who were between like 45 and 60 and didn't need to be sold a fantasy. Like there was something there in the movie theaters once upon a time, 20 years ago, before we all started watching, Marvel movies, and then there was nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think Dune quite hits the Oppenheimer button for me, but I did like it. I'll tell you, I won't ruin anything.
It's serious science fiction.
Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was probably a little bit drawn out,
okay.
But you'll see what
Herbert.
I mean.
Yeah, it's Frank Herbert. Like,
what was the director there? Dennis.
Villeneuve.
Villeneuve. Yeah, thank you.
Villeneuve. Yeah.
It was like there was like scenes in it where nothing's happening. It's just for dramatic effect, and those scenes just went too long.
Yeah. Well, he's notorious for that. I mean, and by the way, adult science fiction, we used to have that too. Blade Runner was like the watermark of adult science fiction.
Right.
It was not Star Wars. Like no. not even a little bit. So Blade Runner was the high watermark of that, but I think Dune is an attempt to capture that. Villeneuve, he directed The Arrival.
Which I thought was also a pretty good movie. Actually.
Right. But it also had moments where nothing happened.
Nothing happened. Right.
Or Blade Runner 2049, the Blade Runner sequel. At first I was like, they're gonna do a Blade Runner sequel. This is not gonna be good. And it's okay. Like I rewatched it a couple of years ago. I was like, oh, okay, this is not terrible. And again, there's times in there where like just nothing happens. So he's notorious for that.
Yeah. But again, so I back to Oppenheimer and the awards part of it. I was actually very happy. Like I said, I was happy that it won the awards it did. I do think So it was so funny that I watched the movie Poor Things with Emma Stone in it over the weekend. I think it was on Saturday. My wife and I watched it on Saturday, and we totally forgot that the Oscars were even on Sunday. We just totally forgot until last minute. But when she won, it was funny because earlier that day, somebody asked my opinion of the movie, and I said my take on the movie was I didn't understand what the movie made no sense to me. It was absolutely not worth the 2 hours I spent watching it. However, if you just take it in piece by piece by piece, I thought the actual talent level of acting in it was actually way better than you typically see.
Okay.
Like Emma Stone was incredibly good. You can tell she's a talented actress by watching this movie. It takes her so far out of what you normally see her in, and she still performs at a top at an Oscar level, obviously now, but at a top level that the movie was. I would not rewatch it, and I would not suggest somebody to watch it unless they wanted to watch a very good piece of acting by Emma Stone. And Mark Ruffalo was probably not what you would expect him to be in it, but he was okay. Like I thought he was okay. I thought Willem Dafoe did a really nice job, but that's Willem Dafoe. Come on, I mean
Yeah,
the
that's Willem Dafoe.
guy's
Yeah,
awesome, right? Like
yeah.
you could put Willem Dafoe in a Fruit Loops commercial, and you'd be like, wow, this is the best Fruit Loops commercial I've ever seen.
He's like Gary Oldman. Like he's
Yeah,
just going to be who he is, and that's going to be amazing. And
right.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you're gonna get good guys like Christopher Walken, like
Yeah.
you're gonna get good acting when you see certain people involved in it. But that does not make the dialogue in the movie good. It just makes their acting rising above, like their acting made the movie better than what it should have been.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
the movie itself, the plot,
Yeah.
it was not a good movie, people. I'm sorry. I
Like I
can't
said,
understand why it won awards, but Emma Stone she was very good in the movie.
like I said, some people are not some people. Some movies need to go direct to streaming. Just
Yes.
direct streaming. Um So where are we going to go next on this podcast? What do we got? What do we got upcoming?
Do you want to talk a little bit about what's upcoming? Do you have any?
Yeah,
Do you want to kind of make like some sort of like announcement of like here are the next here
yeah,
are the next books of note, and maybe not
yeah,
all of them, but like if are there any that jump out at you?
yeah. Let me pull up the list here because I do have a list. I know it's kind of weird.
You
to
mean
think
you don't
about.
just wing this? This isn't a fly by the seat of your pants kind of ordeal.
It may sound like a fly by your seat of your pants ordeal when you're listening to it on the other end, but no, we actually do a lot of planning in here, and then sometimes the wheels rattle and things fall apart. But hey, we did have a plan going in. Speaking of which, I was just having a plan. I was just rewatching, which my wife thinks I've watched this movie way more than I actually have. I've only watched it like maybe 3 times. Ford versus Ferrari.
Oh yeah, that was a good movie too.
I love the moment when the grandson, Henry Ford's grandson, Henry Ford III, I think it was, walks into the Ford plant, and he's like, he shuts down the entire plant. He says, everybody who's standing here today, and I'm paraphrasing, but everybody who's standing here today needs to walk home and come up with some ideas. And if you don't come back with ideas, you're fired. It's everybody on the floor because he's like, we're not going to go down being known as the company that took it up the tailpipe from Chevy. And I was thinking about this movie because it is a perfect example. Ford versus Ferrari is a perfect example of two men coming together with a team of other individuals to do something really, really hard that's like really, really difficult. And we take it for granted that this is one of the challenges of leadership. We take it for granted that difficult things just happen, and they don't. Like, it's hard. Like, there was a project that I've been wanting to work on for a while, and we had one committee meeting about it, and I realized I have zero bandwidth to give to this project. And so I had to tell people this weekend, project's canceled. Like, I can't drive on it. We can't do it. And a bunch of people were disappointed. And would I like to do every single project? Sure. But at a certain point, you got to say no. Or you got to be paired with the right people who can drive with you on that project. So, and speaking of that, what are the upcoming books that we have that we're going to drive on today? That's the segue into the book list.
There you go.
For those of you who are scoring at home or just paying attention. Okay, so what we got coming up? Well, in the month of April, we will be covering Russian authors. So we are going to read Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Lolita was turned into a movie back in the 1960s. It was also a book that was banned in the United States for a long time and banned in Russia as well. It is a story of a grown man who has a relationship with a 14-year-old. And so we are going to figure out what we can pull out of that. And by the way, it was not a book that I had on my list or on my radar. It was a book that was suggested to me by the guest that's going to be coming on to discuss the book because it's one of her favorite books. This should be fascinating. But it goes along in April with all of our books that we're going to be covering from the Russian authors. So we're going to start off with Nabokov, and then we're going to go into Dostoevsky. We're going to read The Brothers Karamazov, a book that I was supposed to read last year but did not. Fathers and Sons by Turgenev with Libby Younger. And then, of course, Tolstoy. We're going to bring Tom Libby back from War and Peace, Part 1. Part 1.
Well, come on. There's no way we're going to cover that book in an hour and a half, 2 hours. There's no way.
We're going to barely get through 5 pages of Part 1. That's the reality of that. Then in May, we're going to be covering some female authors. So 7 Gothic Tales by Karen Blixen. We're going to bring on Tom for Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Yes, there are leadership lessons from Little Women. Pale Horse, Pale Rider, 3 short novels by Catherine Ann Porter. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Thurston, a book that we started on last year, but we did not get to, and we are going to bring it back. In June, it is our anti-tyranny and totalitarianism month. So we're going to strike out against all those forces of tyranny and totalitarianism. And we're going to start off the month with Tom Libby and I talking about To Kill a Mockingbird, Tom Libby's favorite book.
Yeah, one of my all-time favorite books. I've read this book cover to cover several times.
I might actually let Tom write the script for that episode, and then he can tell me what we're going to talk about. Then we're going to cover a serious theological book, The Nature and Destiny of Man, by Reinhold Niebuhr. Reinhold Niebuhr was a theologian of the early 20th century, kind of along the line of C.S. Lewis and Francis Schaeffer, who really laid the foundations for where American Christianity and American theological thought went in the 20th century, particularly in opposition to communism, right? Night by Eli Wiesel. The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And then we're going to drop a couple of bonus episodes in June, The Count of Monte Cristo. And we are going to cover, actually just cut this episode recently with the guest that I'm going to be having up in June, a more modern leadership book, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. If you don't know who Jocko Willink is, just Google that guy. He's exactly who you would think of with a name like Jocko. Tom knows who I'm talking about. And then, of course, in July, we will be talking with DeRollo Nixon, and we will be covering all of the foundation papers of the United States, as we do every July. But we will also be adding in a bonus episode talking about lessons in leadership, a weekly reading of the Jewish Bible by Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs with a special guest. That was a book, again, that was suggested to me by the guest. Look forward to talking about that. In August, we will be covering Shakespeare. In September, you're going to want to pay attention for this upcoming sci-fi and fantasy. Speaking of, now this is the reason why I have not seen Dune Part 1 or Part 2, because in September, I'll be covering Dune with a very special guest. And so I'm saving up all my ammunition on Dune for December. I'm chucking it all in the back. I'm keeping my powder dry. We'll also be covering Fahrenheit 451, an amazing little book there. And Tom and I will be talking about the short stories of Philip K. Dick. Do androids really dream of electric sheep, Tom? And if they do, how could they do that if there's no God in the machine?
There's no, never mind.
I'm poking Tom on purpose on this one. Poking him. In October, Tom and I will talk about Sitting Bull, his life and legacy by Ernie Lapointe. October is our warfare and battles month. We'll be covering the history of the Peloponnesian War. We will go into part 2 of About Face by Colonel David Hackworth. And of course, we will be covering a book that was turned into a Netflix movie that should have won Best Picture, not in 2023, but should have won Best Picture for 2022. I think it was the Best Picture of 2022. Of course, it did not win because it was a foreign film, which is silly. All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Remarque. That was probably one of the best movies that I saw in 2022. And of course, because there's no justice in the world, it didn't win Best Picture. So there you go. November, we're going to talk about Service. And Tom is off the month of November. That's a month where we will not be seeing Tom.
As of right now, because I have this feeling that something. Hey Tom, what about this Monday in November? I need a favor. So I can picture that.
I tell you what.
As of right now, Tom's off for November.
As of right now, Tom's off. But maybe I'll bring Tom in for Fear and Misery of the Third Reich by Bertolt Brecht. Yeah. Tom's like, forget my number.
Yeah.
Just forget it. Forget you had my number. Just forget.
Don't text me. My SMS is broken on my
I don't know what happened. It dropped in the toilet. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Weird things happening out here. And then in December, to wrap up the year, Gift of the Magi, short stories by O. Henry. I've loved O. Henry's stories for many, many years. It took me a long time to find the book that has the 41 stories of O. Henry. But he was an amazing short story writer. And it's always good to do short stories in December because, well, there's a lot of things that go on in December. December is usually a busy month with a lot of folks. So that's the layout for the year. That's where we're going. Tom will be along on this journey.
Couple pretty cool books in there, though.
Yeah, I think you're very excited about To Kill a Mockingbird. You're very excited about.
I'm very excited about To Kill a Mockingbird. Yes,
and the Sitting Bull there. By the way, do you want me to do, when we talk about To Kill a Mockingbird, do you want me to do my best Gregory Peck impression?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Peck.
I want to make sure that I want to see that in the script.
You want to see that in the script? Gregory Peck impression? Not a problem. I even have glasses and the whole thing. I'll put on a wig. It'll be good. You'll see it on the video.
Excellent.
Man, that guy had a full head of hair. That guy was an amazing actor.
He was a very good actor, yes.
Any other thoughts on this, our 99th episode? Anything else for the good of the order? How do we stay on the path with this podcast?
Well, I think
if you were recommending it to others, what would you say? If somebody walked up to you where you live and say, "What's a good podcast I should be listening to, Tom?" After you recommend your own, of course, then you recommend this one.
Depends on who I was talking to. I might recommend this one first, depending on who it was. No, I think so. I think number one, let me answer the first question first, right? Which is like, I think you've done a really nice job really building a foundation of this podcast where you have guests who have strong opinions. You have guests who are intelligent and thought-provoking when they speak. They don't just, I feel like not imposter syndrome by any means, but I feel like I'm the most, I would say, off the cuff. That's not the word I'm looking for. Improvising. I'm probably the most improvising of all the guests. Everybody else has pretty well-trained thought processes behind what they're talking about. I kind of look at this as a mental exercise for myself in kind of thinking on the fly, right? So I force myself to try to be intelligent on the fly and not have a week to really like get down. Anyway, but to get to your point, like I think to get to your question, I think that you've laid a really good foundation of really good people. You have a lot of good discussions and back and forth. You allow the guests to speak their mind. You do a really nice job not stifling thought processes and things like that. But I think your choice of books lends to those kinds of conversations. I think that the choosing the right books and the right things makes sense. The fact that you allow us as your guests to have influence over some of that, I think also makes a lot of sense. So I think that looking forward, I think you've already laid a good foundation for this podcast to be around for a long time. I from that perspective. What would I say to somebody to get them to listen to it, or why would I suggest it? It's some of the same reasoning, right? Like you're gonna listen to a podcast about people really trying hard to take something that you might have read from high school and give you a reason to go back and read it. Like, because now you're gonna think, oh, I read Sense and Sensibility, I read The Good Earth, I've read these books, and I wasn't thinking of that. So let me go reread the book and get some, and you might be able to actually enjoy the book from a completely different perspective. Or take somebody like myself who didn't really enjoy reading fiction at all as a kid. And now I'm looking at these books from a completely different perspective. And now I'm thinking this fiction book has a basis in reality. So this is now turning me into thinking of, how do I take this fiction book and translate it into nonfiction for somebody who reads nonfiction? So that's kind of how I would approach it with somebody going, listen, you've never heard a podcast like this before. You've never heard books you've heard of your entire life, and some of which you've probably read and quote unquote been forced to read, but are taking in such a different context that you might actually want to go back and reread them. Yeah. Some of these great classic books that you might want to go back and reread and think of, how do I translate this book into my life today, which most people did not do when we were high school and college. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I think that's part of it too. I think there's a lot of kind of, a lot of wow factor in the fact that I'm reading this book that I paid no attention to, or I read this book, I'm thinking of of Mice and Men, or, Lord of the Flies, whatever, right? Some of these like middle school kind of books where the only reason you read them is because you had to write a book report on them. You were forced to write a book report. So you didn't read the book for pleasure. You literally read the book for information to put on another piece of paper so that you got a good grade. And now with your podcast, you can actually go back and reread these books and start opening your mind up to completely different levels of thought process when reading these classic books. So I think there would be a lot of worth for somebody to listen to the podcast.
Absolutely. No, I agree with all of that. And I think that staying on the path of leadership is hard. And I think that, as one of our earlier guests said way at the beginning of this podcast, and I've never forgotten it, he said, leaders are readers, right? But it's not just reading the nonfiction. It's not just reading the skill set, the nuts and bolts books, right? You can get up a good skeleton, but you got to put muscle, and you got to put flesh, and you got to put organs. You got to build a whole body, right? You got to build something. Just having a structural framework for your leadership life isn't good enough. You have to be able to inhabit that structure. And what fiction does, what the best fiction does, and is that it gives meaning. Fiction provides meaning for people. This is why books like the Bible, books like the Epic of Gilgamesh, books like the Republic of Plato, Shakespeare. Yeah, this is why those books have stood the test of time, because they're more than just a series of philosophical treatises or an epic story or an epic narrative. It's not just a collection of history and commentary and poetry, which is what the Bible is, along with a structural guide to how to live, right? These books provide flesh to the structure of the decisions that you make and the meaning that you want to get in your life. Books are also, and this is something that I've never said before, but it occurs to me now, books also provide a window into other people's souls. They provide a window into that thing, that spark, that flame that makes us human. And I opened up this podcast episode today by talking a little bit about artificial intelligence. I want to close by making an appeal for leaders to humanity. I don't care how much the algorithm does for you, and I don't care how much it may mimic, or it may ape, or it may pretend to be human. There's no soul inside of the algorithm. Human beings are really, really cool at doing a lot of interesting things, and we've made a lot of interesting things. And science has gotten us very far. I mean, for God's sakes, antibiotics and good sanitary practices have saved more people than anything else on the planet. Science brought us that. I'm not down on science, but science doesn't solve for every human problem. And the promises that the technologists are making us, that these new scientific gee-whiz Promethean-like things that they're bringing down from the mountain, these things will solve every human whim. And we will have, as one technologist I read what was said, we will have our own gods because we will create them. As my mama would have said back in the day, you better slow your roll, son. There is no God inside the machine, but there is. There is a human being back there. A human being with biases, a human being with ideas, a human being with emotional intelligence or a lack of emotional intelligence, a human being with practical skills, a human being that has trauma, a human being that comes from a family and a community and a nation state, a human being with opinions and thoughts and ideas. That human behind the godless machine, behind the empty machine, that human is the one that gives the machine life. And it will always be that way. Now, do we have the capacity to build our own Skynet? Sure. We have the capacity to build things that will kill us. We've already done it with a bomb. That's the entire plot of Oppenheimer. We've already done it. And we don't fear a thing, to paraphrase from Cillian Murphy in that movie. We don't fear a thing until we've used it. I don't believe that human beings should have their fears overblown, but nor do I believe we should have our fears underdone and undercooked. And I believe that leaders and leadership is responsible for balancing the ship. It's responsible for pragmatism. It's responsible for strength. It's responsible for accountability and ownership. It's also responsible for vision. It's responsible for putting the flesh onto the bones of life that provide meaning. And a machine can't do that. But a human being can. Because human beings are the only ones that always have. There's no aliens and there's nobody coming to get us. We're it. We are all that we have for each other. And so let us go out. Let us read these books. Let us take this paper flesh and let's put it on the structure of our leadership practices. And let's build better people so that we can build better machines. And maybe by doing so, maybe we can build a better, more human and humane future. And with that, my name is Jesan Sorrells. This, of course, is Tom Libby. And you have been listening to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books Podcast. And we're out. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books Podcast today. And now that you've made it this far, you should subscribe to the audio version of this show on all the major podcast players, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music, and everywhere else where podcasts are available. There's also a video version of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the video version of this podcast on the Leadership Toolbox channel on YouTube. Just search for Leadership Toolbox and hit the subscribe button there on YouTube. And while you're doing that, leave a 5-star review if you like what we're doing here on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Just go below the player and hit 5 stars. We need those reviews to grow, and it's the easiest way to help grow this show. And tell all your friends, of course, in leadership. By the way, if you don't like what we're doing here, well, you can always listen to another leadership show. There are several other good ones out there. At least that's what I've heard. All right. Well, that's it for me.